The Aztec universe was inherently precarious. According to their theology, the cosmos was a fragile construction, living under a constant, looming threat of collapse. Their world was not a permanent creation, but rather the fifth attempt at a functional universe. This massive carving, the Sunstone, records that history of failure. 4 square panels around the center represent the previous eras and their cataclysms, devoured by giant jaguars, swept away by hurricanes, incinerated by rains of fire, and finally drowned in a 52-year deluge. This cyclical history of annihilation defined the Aztec consciousness. They understood that their current world, the fifth sun, existed on a knife's edge. Without active, constant intervention, the universe would inevitably return to chaos. That intervention was born in the darkness of Teotihuacán. After the fourth flood receded, the gods gathered in these ruins to determine who would bring light back to a black world. A humble, sickly god named Nanahuatzin stepped forward and cast his physical body into a massive, roaring bonfire. He sacrificed his form to emerge from the flames as Tonatiuh, the radiant new sun. But the creation was incomplete. The new sun hung frozen in the sky, refusing to move and demanding the remaining gods sacrifice their own blood to set the cosmos in motion. The remaining deities complied, giving up their lives to provide the initial energy for the world to turn. This act established the ultimate law of the Aztec universe. The gods had to die so humanity could live. This primordial event forged a binding cosmic contract, a blood debt where the continuation of life must be perpetually paid for with life. The Aztec gods acted as the mechanical maintainers of this fragile system, aggressive creditors who demanded repayment for their initial sacrifice. Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent of wind and wisdom, brought civilization and the calendar to mankind, but his narrative emphasizes a strict balance required for life to continue. Tlaloc, the terrifying god of rain, sustained the maize crops with water, but he was a ruthless creditor who demanded payment in blood and the tears of the young. Huitzilopochtli, the patron god of war and the sun, required daily nourishment to fuel his struggle against the forces of darkness and ensure the sun rose every morning. This was a transactional universe. These deities would allow the cosmos to collapse the moment humanity defaulted on its payments. Since the gods died to create the world, humanity inherited the terrifying burden of providing the fuel to keep it in motion. The relentless warfare of the empire served this specific cosmic obligation. The Flowery Wars were sacred missions designed to capture high-status warriors as the required currency for the gods. Warm blood and living hearts were the literal currency needed to keep the cosmos turning. These sacrifices served as a grim, heroic necessity to stave off the skeletal star demons waiting in the dark to devour the earth. This immense cosmic pressure centered on a single night every 52 years. When the 2 primary calendars aligned, the contract reached its expiration date and was up for renewal. The empire fell into a state of paralysis. Every fire was extinguished. Pregnant women were locked in granaries, and children were kept awake, fearing that if the ritual failed, the utter darkness would transform them into monsters. On this isolated stone platform, high priests sacrificed a single warrior and attempted to kindle a new fire inside his empty chest cavity. As the new fire spread from that mountain to the rest of the empire, it affirmed their identity as the people of the sun, the guardians bearing the tragic, terrifying responsibility of keeping the universe alive. In most modern religions, your afterlife is a report card. If you live a good life, you go to heaven. If you're wicked, you face eternal punishment. But for the Aztecs, the gods didn't care about your morals. Your kindness, your cruelty, your daily actions, none of it mattered once you took your last breath. Instead, your eternal destination was determined entirely by the exact physical circumstances of your death. How you died provided the absolute coordinates for where your soul would be sent. To understand this system, look at the geography of the Aztec cosmos. It was a vast vertical axis. Above, there were 13 layers of heavens. Below, 9 descending layers of the underworld. Suspended in the exact center was the fragile plane of human existence, Earth. At death, you triggered a mandatory migration, traveling either up to the canopy or down into the abyss. This meant every Aztec citizen walked life with a heavy realization. Their eternal fate rested entirely on the unpredictable, uncontrollable events of their final moments on Earth. Let's follow an ordinary person. Imagine an average Aztec farmer or weaver who reaches the end of a long life and passes away quietly in their sleep, or succumbs to a common illness. A quiet, peaceful death meant the gods of the upper realms hadn't claimed them. Instead, gravity took hold. Their soul was pulled downward into the dark expanse of Mictlan. The journey began with a definitive separation. The life force detached from the physical corpse, leaving the warmth and light of the earthly boundary behind to step into the shadows. For the vast majority of the population, death offered no peaceful rest. It was the starting gun for a brutal, relentless 4-year survival trek through the underworld. The first major barrier facing our traveler was the Appenweier River. This was an impossibly wide, violent torrent of water, churning too fast for any human spirit to swim across alone. The only way across was to ride on the back of a Tlaloc, a sacred hairless dog. Families would specifically cremate one of these reddish dogs alongside the deceased, so its spirit could serve as a cosmic ferryman through the rapids. Once across the water, the soul faced a terrifying mountain pass. But these weren't stationary peaks. The traveler had to time a desperate sprint between two colossal mountains, trapped in a cycle of violently colliding, threatening to crush anything caught inside. Surviving that, they entered a dark, frozen wasteland. Here, the sub-zero winds blew so fiercely that they carried razor-sharp shards of black obsidian, slicing directly into the traversing souls. These horrific trials served a specific mechanical function. They were not retributive punishments for earthly sins. The Underworld was a processor, designed to violently strip away the soul's remaining flesh, earthly belongings, and lingering memories of the living world. As our ordinary soul endures the freezing dark, we can pause to look upward. A lucky minority completely bypassed the tortures of Mictlan. If a person drowned or was struck by lightning, they were personally claimed by Tlaloc, the rain god. They were instantly transported to Tlalocan, a lush, effortless paradise defined by eternal spring and an endless abundance of food. Then there was the highest cosmic honor, the House of the Sun. This bright, soaring heaven was reserved exclusively for warriors killed in combat and the enemy captives offered to the gods on the sacrificial altars. These fallen fighters were granted the glorious duty of escorting the sun across the morning sky. After 4 years of this celestial parade, they returned to the earthly plane, reincarnated as hummingbirds or brightly colored butterflies. The Aztecs also enforced a profound cultural equalizer. Women who died in childbirth were viewed as having fallen in a sacred, bloody battle. They were elevated to the exact same elite cosmic status as the greatest male warriors, tasked with escorting the sun down into the western sky each evening. In the Aztec mind, violent and exceptional deaths were sacred victories for the state. They rewarded the victims with glorious heavenly duties, while the ordinary citizens were left to suffer in the dark. We snap back to our ordinary soul. 4 grueling years have passed, and they have finally dragged themselves to the 8th level of the Underworld. Here, they faced the ultimate violation. A terrifying jaguar emerged from the shadows, leaping forward to devour the soul's heart. The heart housed the teolia, the vital essence containing a person's life force, their knowledge, and their core identity. Once the jaguar consumed the heart, the soul was no longer human. The individual ego was permanently dissolved, stripping away the very last traces of who they used to be. They were finally ready for the abyss. The fragmented soul finally drifted down into Chikuna Mictlan, the 9th and deepest level of the underworld. Here, they stood before the ruler of the realm. This was Mictlantecuhtli, the skeletal lord of death. With his exposed ribs and grinning skull, he oversaw the final stage of the soul's journey. At the end of the 4-year trek, there is no eternal torture or divine reward. There is only total extinction, where the soul completely decomposes and returned to the void. This erasure was the fulfillment of a natural debt, a necessary breakdown that returned the human essence back to the earth that had once sustained it. The Aztec afterlife functioned as an active thermodynamic ecosystem designed to keep the living world intact. According to their foundational myth, the gods sacrificed their own blood to set the universe in motion. Because of that initial transaction, humanity owed an eternal blood debt to prevent the cosmos from collapsing. The elegance of the Aztec cosmos was highly functional. Ordinary deaths decomposed to feed the soil of the earth. Drowned victims were absorbed into the sky to power the water cycle,
to fuel the daily motion of the sun. In the Aztec worldview, death functioned as a mandatory transition into a new cosmic labor, the beginning of a long shift to keep the universe in motion.